Why, hello there.
Hi there, Shannon. I'm here. What's up?
Well, obviously, you didn't run away screaming yet, so that's always a good sign.
I'm screaming into the bushes, but I still have some
You're
hair left.
screaming internally, huh?
Really.
All right, ready for your update?
Mm, well, let's see. Um, First of all, I want to say with all sincerity and a clean conscience, if anybody thinks that I'm running a Ponzi scheme here, they're welcome to walk out the door and never say another word to me again. Okay? I have spent 50 years of my life exposing the greatest fraud in human history. I've risked my life, I've lost my property, I've done all this stuff, and as you can see, I'm living in the wonderful environs of a cement floored, double wide trailer. All right? If I'm some evil, mastermind who stole millions of dollars and running a Ponzi scheme, then I would like someone as sure as hell to show me where I have gotten anything but beaten and battered for the effort I've put into this. I want to see where the money is. I want to see where I benefited. I want to see where my husband benefited. I want to see all this. I want it in black and white. And I want it to be, something more than a bunch of people sitting around in a back office looking at something from the outside and making all these wild accusations. I'm sick and tired of it. I don't even pay any attention to it. Neither should you. It's very simple. I never had those Citibank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo accounts, none of that. That was all Hunter. It was all under his name, all under his control. As bank director, he was legally, lawfully, morally obligated to run those with integrity. And I told him to leave the FRNs that were exchanged in those accounts so that if somebody needed to exchange back to FRNs, the money would be there. I gave him the correct instructions. He chose not to follow those instructions. And he's the one who pilfered the FRNs, which had already been exchanged for AFD, out of those accounts. Now, I want to make it really, really clear to all the dumbasses out there that once those FRNs were exchanged for AFD, those FRNs no longer belong to you. It's like any other currency exchange. You walk in with your US dollars and you exchange them for Swiss francs. You don't get to hang on to your US dollars and get the Swiss francs. Doesn't work that way. You traded Federal Reserve notes, which are admittedly of only symbolic value. We have multiple federal courts who have told you repeatedly that Federal Reserve notes have only symbolic value. That if somebody steals a trainload of them, you can't even bring charges of theft against them. Because what? Because they have only symbolic value. So you traded something that admittedly has only symbolic value for gold-backed currency, actual money. And if that's not what you intended to do, it is not for lack of me telling you that that's what it was always about. Taking something that had devalued to a point where it was worth nothing and getting some of your buying power and your actual asset-backed money back. And that, by the way, is more than anybody else anywhere offered any of you at any time. Just this afternoon, I've been informed that the push is on to remove Federal Reserve notes and euros and all other species of fiat money from circulation. Well, you all should know by now why they're doing that. They're removing it from circulation because it's evidence of crime. And I've also described the nature of that crime repeatedly. So, you want to accuse me of doing something shady? How about accusing the Federal Reserve of stealing your gold and silver in exchange for pieces of paper, and then inflating the hell out of the pieces of paper, whatever value they were presumed to have acquired, until they have only symbolic value, while you all slept? I swear to God, sometimes I feel like I'm the only person in America, and Jim, of course, who were awake, who paid any attention at all to what was going on. And for this, I'm getting slandered, accused of wrongdoing. What wrongdoing have I done? What benefit have I accrued? I am absolutely fed up with this nonsense. So you can all take your little flapping jaws and go somewhere else. See if there's a better boat afloat. Go join some other, whack job idea of how you're going to get out of this and how you're going to save yourselves. Maybe you think Mr. Trump is going to save you. I don't know what you think. At this point, I don't care. If you don't want to believe in what you're doing and don't see the rational logic to what we're doing, then you shouldn't be here. And you're welcome to leave. There is a logic to absolutely everything we've done. There is a legal, lawful, reasonable, rational progression based on fact to everything we've done. And if you cannot hold your mind in the correct orientation to tell fact from fiction, then you obviously don't belong here. I have been absolutely amazed at how weak-minded certain people have been.
I'd like to know what bonuses and kickbacks we're supposedly getting. I'm putting in 6 to 8 hours for you a day and another 8 to 12 hours on my business so I can make a living.
Yeah. There's nobody here that made any money off of anybody else. We've all been scraping by and hanging together. So this is just, it's ridiculous. And it needs to stop. So that's one update. I want you to know for a fact that the FBI has been investigating me now for 50 years. They had 7 million pages on me before I even began this work. And why was that? Why? Why would anyone be tracking me to that extent? It makes no sense until you realize that they knew who I was before I knew who I was. They were tracking me because of who I was, and they were keeping that knowledge away from me. So the villains in this story are not me. I was a baby who was separated from my family and abused and thrown into poverty and lived most of my life without knowing. Anyway, I have a clear view of what I've done. I don't have anything on my conscience. Zero. If God calls me tonight, I'm ready to go. So just put that in your pipes, smoke it, think about it, and realize that anybody who says anything different, A, doesn't know, and B, doesn't care, and I have no respect for them. I literally don't care about them. All right? I'm perfectly content if they do not benefit from the decades of hard work I put into this. It would please me no end if they fritz out, lose faith, and don't get their share. But I don't really care. I got involved in this for two reasons. Well, three reasons. One, I knew if I didn't, I would be an accomplice to the crime. Two, my husband was in it up to his ears just by virtue of being who he was, born into the family he was born into. And three, I realized that if we didn't do something, if all of us didn't get on our high horse and do something, they were going to get away with stealing this entire country right out from underneath our feet. And we would be facing exactly what Thomas Jefferson warned about, somewhat cryptically, when he said that if we didn't retain our vigilance, we would wind up disinherited on the land that our fathers pioneered, or words to that effect. And when I first read that quote, which was many, many years ago, I couldn't imagine it. I couldn't imagine what he was talking about. But this is what he was talking about. It was the deceit and the impersonation and the impersonation of us as British subjects and or municipal citizens of the United States. This is how they have striven to disinherit us from our lawful interest in our land and soil, our minerals, our water, our air, our control over our lives, and our law. He was exactly right. He already knew the kind of quote unquote jurisdictional mischief that could be played. Anyway, the actions that I've taken have thus far proven to be very effective. We have succeeded in bringing back the work that we had to do to bring the bank back online under a different name, under a protected status. We've also done a lot of work this afternoon on getting land protection and house protection in place. Among all the other things that we do in our spare time between 12 and midnight and 3 in the morning is trying to get ahead of and stop the mortgage fraud and the property tax fraud that has already engulfed millions of Americans. Homes are being lost, businesses are being lost, and entire swaths of public land are being lost because of fraud, abject fraud. And this is part of what the gigantic great fraud that I've been describing all along. And those of you who are not up to speed with this, there's a man in Texas, I believe his name is Max Wexler, who has brought a suit all the way to the US Supreme Court about the mechanics of the fraud, whereby they make up a fraudulent, inflated school district budget, and then they selectively change the mill rate and the assessments of property values to meet that arbitrary school district budget. There's so many things about that that are backwards, sideways, upside down, that I can't even get into all of the details of it, but I will be posting YouTube information, stuff that they have actually posted on YouTube so that everybody can listen to the details. And that's just property tax. That has nothing to do with the almost $4 trillion that are extracted from us every year from our labor via the federal income tax, which is another huge fraud, along with the mortgage fraud. So you've got 3 huge frauds right staring you in the face, and it doesn't begin to touch the fraud that is represented by the Federal Reserve dollar. It's trillions and trillions of dollars. And a lot of it has been paid for with real blood and real sacrifice, taken out of the American people, taken out of the Western European countries, taken out of Japan, taken out of the Philippines, taken out of any country where these criminals have operated for the last 150, 60 years. This is the magnitude and scope of what we're facing. In any event, thanks to the work that you have done, thanks to the work that the Federation volunteers have done, thanks to the work that our researchers have done, thanks to the work that our analysts have done, we're in a pretty decent position right now. We are making the effort to bring forward our claims to basically lawfully convert all these bankrupt corporations and bring them back under land law, which will automatically enforce the constitutions and will also give access to the prepaid credit we're owed, the asset-backed money we're owed, and the government we're owed. Now, I'm sorry if some of this is going right over the tops of people's heads. There are times when it seems like it's impossible to explain something simply enough and to get it across in one sitting for someone. But we are making huge progress. And it's on a worldwide basis. It's not just this country. It's a lot of other countries that are waking up. It's a lot of other people that are highly motivated. It's millions of people worldwide who now see the fraud for what it is and who are taking action in their own sphere, in their own nation, to answer it. And I tell you, the down and dirty of these mercenaries is very intense. There are people who are losing everything they ever owned. There are people who are losing their lives over this. There are people who are being smeared with hateful slander campaigns. There are people who are being arrested on false charges based on videotapes that are then proven to be Hollywood manufactured CGI representations of them. We've had all sorts of dirt going on. And all these mercenaries are in here pitching and punching and trying to get their hands on whatever they can get their hands on. You know, this whole situation with the Global Family Bank being commandeered. Well, what do you find? Hunter Toyofuku Aki was attacked by the IRS. He was attacked by the IRS because he was pilfering Federal Reserve notes out of those Citibank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America accounts that had already been exchanged for AFD. So then he's got the IRS and the FBI leveraging him, you know, cut us a deal, you know, make something up, do whatever you can. We're not really after you. We're after Anna. We're after the entire movement of people that are trying to, you know, bring some sanity into this scenario. And so he goes, oh, okay, well, I'll change the bank. I'll sign these papers, even though he didn't have any authority to do so as bank director. And I'll convert the bank into a British Crown franchise operation. Just give me a license and a number, and I'll go right along with anything you say. This is how they operate. They get something on somebody, and then they force them to do whatever they want. And this is what they did. Okay? Happens all the time. They put people in jail, and then they say, hey, but here's your plea deal. Help us undermine this. Help us get control of that. Help us steal this resource. Help us do some other nefarious thing. That's what happened to Schaefer Cox up in Fairbanks. They got a snitch in trouble. And so this guy infiltrated a little group of patriots in Fairbanks, Alaska, got this young man talking about completely theoretical things, you know, what if situations. And because he was talking about these contingency plans of what could happen if something happened, they arrested him for a thought crime and threw him into jail for 26 years. You have no freaking idea how cutthroat, how vicious, how determined, or how well funded, or how sneaky these people actually are, or the lies that they will tell. It is not an easy environment for anybody who's aware to navigate. We've had multiple attacks on our assemblies and on our personnel. You know about the Colorado 9. You know about what happened in Waco, Texas. You know what happened at Ruby Ridge. You may or may not know what happened in Nevada, where one of our first coordinators was set up. The FBI came in at night with a bunch of U.S. Marshals and actually dug a big hole on her property with heavy equipment, installed a vault, a metal vault, filled it with guns, AR-27s and everything else. And they were preparing to set her up and use that gun cache as a way to charge her with federal gun violations and accusations of insurrectionist activity. We've had to fight this kind of crap tooth and nail every day for 30 years. So, people ask me how I feel about what Hunter did. I just kind of blink and go, oh, well, par for the course. This is how they operate. This is what they do. They've been doing it since the Civil War and getting away with it. Why wouldn't they continue to do it if they can get away with it? But it's up to the rest of us to make sure that they don't get away with it. And how do we do that? By recognizing what they're doing, by exposing it, by making it so notorious that the next time they look at substituting a British Crown corporation for an American business, they get their hands not only slapped, but cut off. This is part of the reason that we are going through the process of establishing new public laws in this country, is to answer this, to put an end to it, and a lot of other ugly things too. Now, it was very satisfying for me this afternoon to see property that had been stolen based on false claims of property taxes returned to the rightful owners. They were trying to steal an entire city block of property, and they got stopped. It's just one little drop in a huge reservoir of injustice, but it's a first drop. And yes, you can thank me. You can thank Chief Laverne Fasthorse. You can thank a lot of people from all over the world who have seen the rot, who understand the crimes, and who have stepped forward to assist us in restoring our lawful government and reclaiming our property rights. So we started with returning homes that had been illegally, unlawfully confiscated, either by mortgage fraud, property tax fraud, or internal revenue fraud. Those are the three biggies: mortgages, property taxes, and IRS claims. They're all fraudulent. Well, 99% are fraudulent. So, according to their system, they've been issuing an illegal payroll tax, a kickback tax on the payroll, on the earnings of their own employees. And they've just been helping themselves to our earnings as if we were their employees. Ever since the quote unquote 16th Amendment to their corporate constitution was passed, but it was never ever ratified by the states of the Union. How do we know that? Because a man named Bill Benson spent his own time and money and expertise to go to all 50 states and take a head count of the votes on that legislation. And it was legislation. It was not really truly an act of Congress or an amendment to any viable federal constitution. This is the kind of corruption that we've been dealing with in this country. So don't make the mistake of thinking that those who are dealing with this and fighting with it and paying the cost of it every damn day are the villains in this story, because that's just more BS. That's just more projection. That's just more of their old modus operandi of accusing the other guy of what they're doing themselves. And I'm not fool enough to put up with it. Now, you may be interested to know that as of this afternoon, I sat down and wrote out the description of all the homes and lands that I've lost because of their fraud. And I am intent on getting every bit of it back. And those of you who have similarly lost homes and land because of property tax, IRS fraud, or fraudulent mortgages, it's time to sit down, look up those descriptions, the exact addresses, the times and places, look up the actual paperwork that you have, and make your list. Get ready. Because a lot of this property has been stolen. A lot of it has been illegally confiscated. A lot of it has been seized under conditions of fraud and deceit. And a lot of it is returned as of today. So there's an update for you. We are beginning the process of forcing those who stole from us to return the purloined assets. And we're not acting on this alone. We have 162 other nations lined up at our backs. And we are bringing hell to pay on those commercial corporations that have been lying to, using, and abusing our sons and daughters, those that have been foisting off their bills onto us, those who have been evading their own taxes by shoveling them off onto our shoulders, those that have set up a obviously criminal fiat money system. All of it. All of it. We are not talking about nibbling away on the edges of this huge, huge fraud. Those of you who have been here and who have known me know that I have always said, you have a choice. You can spend your time going after the brush fires, or you can go after the arsonists. And what have I declared to you? I'm going after the arsonists. I'm looking for systemic cure. I'm not interested in putting out brush fires. I'm not interested in finding, slick little technicalities that I can use in one case or two to bring justice for a time to just a handful of people at immense expense of effort and money. No, this whole thing has to get cleared up and cleaned systemically for everybody now. And so you're now about to see that kind of a systemic cleanup. And yes, I'm still fighting with the bankers. I'll be fighting with the bankers until they roll over and give it up. Because the bankers have been central players in aiding, abetting, and promoting all of this corruption for profit. And yes, they are still fighting. They're still trying to erase the fiat currency from the market. They're trying to take the Federal Reserve notes out of circulation. They're trying to take the euros out of circulation because it's evidence of their crime. But it is a crime. And the days that they could get away with it are now disappearing in the rearview mirror. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't use credit that we've already earned. And this is where the argument is coming down. Because of the fiat money system and the use of debt notes for currency, all of these corporations are insurmountably insolvent. They could not possibly pay back what they owe. However, if we lawfully convert them, bring them back under land law, and use their facilities, respective facilities, as banks that deal in money, which is international trade banks, and banks that trade in credit, which is commercial banks, then we have a system that works. Then we have a system that is actually paying restitution and providing remedy for those who have been injured for 6 generations. Think about it. They have put the assets in public trusts and traded upon those assets and used those assets as collateral for loans to themselves and grants to themselves and slush money for themselves for 6 generations. It's the longevity of the fraud as much as anything else that makes the collapse that much more unavoidable and that debt to be that much more insurmountable. So it's not just how the fraud was done or the objective mammoth nature of the fraud involved in the mortgage market, the pension fund fraud, the IRS fraud, the property tax fraud. I mean, those are all huge. But then when you add on the currency fraud and you go back 6 generations and you look how they traded upon your parents' estates and your grandparents' estates and your great-grandparents' estates, the magnitude of it is staggering. It's absolutely staggering. And believe me, anybody who has stared at that kind of fraud and had to go toe-to-toe with it has a lifetime commitment against fraudulent actions and untruths of all kinds. So I'm telling you, the entire system has got to be completely changed. It has to be cleaned out. The books have to be balanced at least as much as they can be. And the property, the goods, so to speak, and the value of our purloined labor needs to be returned to the living people. It's a small thing, really, compared to what they've stolen, the lives that have been lost and the lives that have been truncated because of this complete criminality on the part of these commercial corporations. But at least there is some remedy, there is some cure, there is some restitution at the end of the day. And you have all lived long enough to see it. So we'll be moving forward on the new public laws. We'll be moving forward in our diplomatic obligations in terms of making those outreaches and making sure that we continue to have the backing that we need to move forward and get enforcement regarding the transfers of land. You will find that there are several very, very large businesses that have made it their mission to use the property tax fraud schemes and other means to grab up any kind of house or property, any kind of land. And those big corporations are going down. One of the things you will be hearing about is, hold harmless third-party actions. And what that's talking about is, well, for example, my house in Big Lake was stolen in an illegal confiscation action under false legal presumptions and fraud. Okay, so say that someone came along and bought my house in good faith, thinking that they were buying it from a real estate investment company and that investment company had, a lawful, legal, proper claim on the property. Well, the buyer would have no way of knowing that the house had been illegally confiscated in the first place, and that investment company had no real actual right or interest in the property. So here I come and I say, that's my house. Those people are trespassers. I want them kicked out. And they're saying, wait, we already paid $250,000 for this place. We paid Joe over there $250,000. And I'm standing there going, I don't care if you paid Joe $250,000 for my house. Joe doesn't own my house. You've been screwed. You've been defrauded. You've been conned. This is like a Florida real estate offer. It's the old, I'll give you a quick claim deed to this wonderful property in Florida. I just don't happen to own an interest in that wonderful property in Florida, so my quit claim deed is worthless. But this was an institutionalized fraud scheme involving the commercial corporations that have been providing us with government services. It doesn't matter at all. The tragedy is that these third parties who bought these houses and tracts of land in good faith, thinking that they were, buying from reputable buyers and that these people actually had a valid interest in the property, are now another generation, another cadre of people who have been victimized by the fraud. So what do we do with all these third parties, these innocent third parties? How's that going to keep you up at night? That's the kind of thing I have to wrestle with all damn day and all damn night. What do you do with a situation like that, where one person has been harmed, defrauded, trespassed upon, had their property stolen, underwent eviction 2 weeks after her husband died? That was me. I spent 30 years building that property, mowing that lawn, trimming those trees, slathering stain on those shingles. I've done it all. I built that house. I paid for it. And they stole it under force of arms, under false pretenses, in an illegal confiscation action by a commercial corporation that wasn't even admitting its interest and its conflict of interest. But what do we do with the people who bought a place like that? What about the young family that paid $300,000 for it and has a 30-year mortgage? Just kick them out on the street with their puppy dog too? This is a lot worse and a lot more complex than a lot of you have been thinking about. And there's millions and millions of houses and businesses and properties all over this country that have gone through the same exact cycle. IRS, out of here. Criminal organization, privateers operating illegally on our land and soil. They don't deserve spitting on, much less any respect. Now, everybody always hates the tax collector. That's taken for granted. But these people took it a way far above and beyond any kind of taxation. They were used as political assassins. They were used to make false claims against people just to throw them in jail. You've got people like Daniel Applegate making up names and just arbitrarily attaching them to people like me, trying to drum something up that doesn't exist. This is how crazy this has become. So when you see the big news that Mr. Trump is shutting down the IRS, thank me. Thank Bill Benson. Thank those of us who have gone through all this hell for years, for decades, so that Donald Trump could take the credit for shutting down the IRS, which should never have been here in the first place, and which his corporation was supposed to be protecting us from. Pardon me if I'm a little angry today, but at least you'll live to see the IRS close its doors and slink away into the darkness. No matter who gets credit for that, it'll happen. It'll happen soon. And you can all stop sweating through April 15th, wondering if you did it and if you did it right and how much money you might have gotten it over or under. You can stop that now. Because there's systemic remedy on the way here. Because we didn't chase after the brush fires. Because we sacrificed ourselves, sacrificed our property, sacrificed our very lives, if you think about it, because what is a life except the time that you spend and how you spend it? People like Bill Benson, who spent his last years in jail. People like Tommy Cryer. People like the Colorado Nine, who are still rotting in a Colorado jail with murderers and rapists and armed robbers. Men who did nothing. Men who spoke up for what they believed were their rights. Serving 35 years of a hard time. Think about that. And hasten the day when I can go to Colorado and open that door and throw my arms around them and say, welcome home. Be proud of yourselves for being part of that. Know that if our assemblies weren't standing, these corrections, these restitutions, these remedies, these cures would not be possible without what you're doing right now. But don't lose your minds. Don't think that this is anything but a struggle. Don't lose sight of the people that actually fought and who spent years in federal jails and county jails and state prisons for defending their own rights within their own country on their own soil. And don't forget who the real villains in this story are. I'll spell it out for you again. It's the Brits and the Romans and nobody else. They're the ones who have kept this whole ball of wax going. They're the ones that profited from it, and they're the ones to blame. So if you want to get out your little blaming pointers and your waggy fingers, don't even stop and look in our direction. Don't make the mistake of fighting the people who are trying to rescue you. Keep it straight in your mind who the who's who is and who had the control and who pulled the crap. Because you won't find my name on any of it. And you certainly don't see me benefiting myself. Oh yes, where's the palatial home? The nice home I had was stolen from me. Hello? Illegally.
The term nice home is used loosely in this connotation as the one who was doing the remodel on it.
Yes, right. Right. So, if anyone, including Paul Pappas, wants to go around saying that I'm a fraud and that I somehow was running a Ponzi scheme, I'm ready to take him out as the Chief Continental Marshal. I'm ready to stand here toe-to-toe with him. Hell, I've stood toe-to-toe with the Pope. I've stood toe-to-toe with every president since George H.W. Bush. You think I'm going to lay down and roll over because some local thugs who didn't even know that they were doing something wrong came to my house with guns on their hips and pretended that I owed a defunct entity money and threw me out of my own house? You think I'm going to put up with this for myself or anybody else? Think again. Just stop and think again. There is no Ponzi scheme. There is nothing even approaching a Ponzi scheme. They're just a bunch of evil men and women who are trying desperately to maintain a stranglehold on this country long after their fraud, deceit, betrayal of trust, breach of trust, conspiracy against the constitutions, inland piracy, fraud upon fraud, and other evil, criminal, conspiratorial activities are now laid bare for everybody to see. Everybody, worldwide. So open your eyes, look at what's really happening here. And that's my update. Shannon?
I'm here.
I'll answer a few questions. I'm going to pack it in for tonight. I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning this morning, working my ass off, so.
Me too. It's called a baby boy who's got his days and nights flipped.
Mine wasn't anything like that. Mine was poring over real estate law in Britain. Anyway, another story.
Another story for another day. All right. I've gone into the works of Dr. Tom Campbell and Bob Monroe and assume you know them since you talk every once in a while about supernatural things like remote viewing, etc. I would love to hear from you any thoughts, insights, inspiration on the ideas of EGREGORE or LOOSH, especially regarding the building and developing of our new group/assemblies, and also in response to the recent events around Hunter, etc.
Well, what we have here is a world that physics and mathematics tells us is 99.9% air. It doesn't exist. Everything that we think exists pardon me, and which seems to be solid and real is in fact not. Okay? That's what quantum physics tells us. It's all energy. It's all light. We are condensed light. This shirt is condensed light. Everything that we see is condensed light, including the eyes that we use to see. Okay, this is what mathematics and physics tell us. This is what we've discovered in the past 150 years. So if we're condensed light, it follows that energy, massive, unimaginable amounts of energy are being expended to create this illusion. Why do we know that? Because energy equals mass times the speed of light in a vacuum squared, or at least that's an approximation. So a tiny amount of mass requires a vast amount of energy simply to exist. Okay, these are concepts that you just need to kind of think about and nail down. We have 33 trillion volts of energy keeping our bodies alive. Each and every one of us on average, 33 trillion volts of electricity to maintain this. All right? Compare 33 trillion volts of electricity to the 12-volt battery in your car. Think about it. Any one of us could, if we could explode all of the electricity that is used to maintain the illusion of our bodies, we could outperform any bomb that has ever been conceived of by mortal man. Now, these are concepts that most people never have to encounter, and it would be kind of mind-blowing if they did, but they're actually pretty simple and they're staple. I mean, this is stuff that mathematicians and physicists and others know about. And once you know about it, then it makes more sense to you that we are considered to be biological computers and biological batteries, storage batteries of light energy. Photonic, it's called photonic energy, okay? So an egregore is a entity, could be called a demon, that basically sucks that photonic energy out of your electrical field. All right? And when they prey upon our electrical fields in this way, these egregores, demons, whatever you want to call them, are actually purloining photonic energy, using us like a storage battery in order for these parasites to exist. And this is, in fact, what we've been dealing with all these centuries when we've been talking about demonic possession. We've been talking about people that have been possessed by different spirits and that sort of thing. You're actually talking about parasites attaching themselves to an individual person at different levels and feeding upon them. And this food, this photonic energy that they extract from us, is called in slang loosh. And this is what they're feeding upon, is a form of photonic energy that is imbued with emotion. And most often that emotion is terror. For some reason, these parasites love the taste of this photonic energy when it's infused with terror. Now, I have been aware of this for many years. It is part of the reality of our lives, that there are such things, that people do become possessed by them. They get influenced by these parasites. I suppose you could think of it as fleas on a dog. Most of the time when we are being attacked or targeted as a source of food for these things, we're not aware of it any more than a dog is, aware of an individual tick or an individual flea. But at some time or another in virtually all of our lives, we do have the experience of having been infected by one or more of these entities. And that's nothing to be afraid of. It's something to be aware of. And if you are finding that your energy is being completely sapped for unknown reasons, it's reasonable to kind of take a look around and figure out, well, gee, have I come under the influence of something? Have I allowed something evil to reside in my electrical field? Have I allowed a curse? Curses and evil eyes and hexes. These are traditional words that are used to describe a sudden loss of energy, a sudden loss of health, a sudden loss of luck. How many of you know somebody who just seems to live their life under a constant black cloud? It's like a cartoon character, he's got the cloud over him, the dark cloud, and wherever he goes, the dark cloud follows. We've all known people like that. Well, we don't talk about it, but chances are that person, who may seem to be as normal and good and reasonable as anybody else, just constantly plagued with bad luck, isn't actually being plagued with bad luck. They're being plagued with an energetic interference, some sort of ill will that has been energetically cast upon them, or ill will in the form of being siphoned by one of these quote-unquote egregores, or demons, or however you want to try to characterize these energetic entities. Anyway, a lot of that is going to get cleaned up too, because as long as we're taking care of our planet, and as long as we're going after remedy and restitution for all the fraud and violence that's been practiced upon the people, we might as well clean up the energetic atmosphere too. And those of you who have read and believed the Bible, and certainly there have been some things that have been mistranslated, things that have been omitted, and so on. But for example, the story of Jesus and the demons, the legion of demons that he cast into a herd of swine, and then the swine all ran off a cliff and drowned in the sea. This is an example of just how numerous these parasites can be, and the fact that, yeah, they can be destroyed. They can be wiped out. And so part of the cleanup that we face is cleaning up our energy space and getting rid of these parasites. So that's just part of the job, folks. We may not be aware of it. We may not think about it day to day. It's not our area of expertise. And so, thank God it is the expertise of some people among us, because there's a lot of cleanup to do. There's a lot of ignorance that needs to be swept away. And there's a lot of kind of caretaking and safekeeping that needs to be done for those that are most vulnerable. Some people are more vulnerable to the infestation of these things. So this is just another aspect of the effort to clean up our world and make it safe, and to promote the happiness and the full expression, the freedom and the joy of each individual living man, woman, or child. It all goes back to mental health, energetic health, physical health, spiritual health. So I hope that answered the question, and I hope that all of you out there are thinking in terms of these changes in our scientific knowledge, and beginning to grapple with everything that is being implied by modern physics. So, Shannon, do you have another question?
No, but I'm hearing your voice cracking after you've talked straight for the last hour and a half minus 30 seconds, and I think you need to call it a night, boss.
Yeah, I'm beginning to fade. I had a late night last night, and I'm feeling that I've given my full ounce of everything I had to give for the day. So maybe it is time for that bubble bath and some deep breaths and some gratitude that we're finally beginning to move on the restoration of homes and lands that have been illegally confiscated. I'm very grateful for that, and I hope that you all are too. It's a big day. I'm too tired right now to really appreciate the whole scope of what this means for millions of Americans whose homes and lands and businesses have been illegally confiscated. I'm still a little bit in a stunned area for what this means for me, because I've lost not only my home, but over a series of attacks over a period of 20 some years, have lost a lot of other things, a lot of other property that has been equally illegally confiscated from me. So the house was just the tip of the iceberg. And I'm still, I haven't caught up with what this means for me in terms of getting my property back. But no doubt tomorrow I'll wake up and begin grappling with that too.
No rest for the wicked, no rest for the weary, and we're both wickedly weary.
I hope everybody is, as I say, keeping your head screwed on. I hope that you are keeping your attention centered on the things that matter to you, to your home, your family, your community, your dream of what you want to see in this world. I hope that you all spend some time in your happy place, because things are going to start to get very busy. And those learning to take those moments of rest and learning to take that time to meditate a little bit about, who you are, where you want to be, what matters to you. Doing that every day is important, and I hope you're all remembering to do that. So, God bless, upward and onward. Tomorrow's another day, and we will be rejoicing and be grateful for it. Good night.
Okay, that's enough, boss. You're pushing your voice too far.
Good night.